Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the EVOQ Bike Podcast presented by High North Coaching, which is Tom Bell's coaching company. And we were catching up on a VLaMax podcast, and we just started chopping things up a little bit and got rolling on a 20-minute conversation that I think is very valuable to some of you out there. So we made that the first podcast. Hopefully you enjoy this. Check out Tom's blog, check out our blog, and if you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. It really helps us out. And on to the show. Thanks, Tom, for doing this. And part 2 will be out soon.
Yo.
Hey, dude.
What's up?
Not much. Yeah, all good. How about you?
Pretty good. Coming back to life after COVID, and
Oh man, yeah. God,
killed
you feeling
me.
you feeling back to like 100% now, or
I would say
still got a
90.
way to go?
No, I would say 99. You'll hear it at some point. Every once in a while, I get like a little piece of phlegm, and apparently a
Just
lot
get
of people,
caught.
yeah, just do that a little bit. So that's kind of weird, but yeah, man. I'm blessed in that I don't get sick often, and it just
Yeah,
crushed me. So weird virus, just weird symptoms, like, yeah, super low energy, no motivation. um that was the worst part. You're like, I don't want to do anything. I finally succumbed to it. I mean, when I was in Minnesota, I had my bike and I was like, all right, I really shouldn't ride this thing. It wasn't even fun to ride. I had like no watts. And I went to this grocery store and got like a bunch of figs and dates and like some sparkling water, like just random things, and like laid on a bed and watched TV. And I was like, huh, this is what it's like to be lazy.
this is what normal people do.
I didn't want to say that, but it was like, oh, this is, yeah, okay. So once I was sleeping. I get up pretty early. I was sleeping until like 7:30 in the morning, like some 10, 11-hour rests. Just like, whoa, this is weird. So
Mm.
it's been good to be back. Did some over-unders maybe on Thursday, did a group ride, a super small group ride on Saturday. So went hard, feeling pretty good. So yeah, just kind of getting back into it. And I will say the time off was weird, of like thinking of how much time I spend riding, and sort of, I think, a continuation of some like midlife evaluation after turning 40. So I think it's been good. I think I'll have a healthier appreciation of riding, maybe. I don't know. But
Yeah, yeah. I don't see why not. Get to see a little bit the other side, and then yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised you had like quite a motivational sort of wobble there, because I've heard it from other people who have got COVID as well. You suddenly just stop riding, and you almost just see things from a different perspective, and you're like, oh well, sometimes you can just live without like riding every day, and you realize when you've not got a 3, 4, 5 hour ride to do every day, how much time you've got for other things. And
it's crazy.
it is crazy, yeah.
I mean, there was the day when there's not a 4-hour ride. I like had all my athletes done. I was like working on this blog. I was like, all right, it's noon. What do I do the rest of the day? It's just so, yeah. I don't know. I'm a little torn, because I think the way the how I was piecing things together in my head was, I really didn't start doing 1,000-hour years until maybe just before we started up. I'd have to look. I went from like 850 to 1,000, and like some 2-hour rides just all became 4-hour rides. And then I was like, well, maybe some of
Mm.
those could be 3-hour rides. But then at the same time, there's no arguing. I'm riding just as well as I did when I was 30 years old, if not better. And the volume is definitely a huge part of that. And I don't know, a 2-hour ride is just so short. So, but then I'm thinking too, the next piece is, do I care about these amateur bike races anymore?
Mm.
I really don't know the answer to that yet. I mean, I'm excited to go to nationals, but I'm having these weird thoughts of like, when I die, who's going to care about these race results? So what are they for? And is it all this riding? Is it for me? That's why I started riding. I started riding to lose weight. And then I started racing because it was something to do. And then I kept racing because winning felt good. And I think going to these crits in Nashville and winning, it felt good. But I told my friend afterwards that, hey, man, it would have been just as fun, or probably more fun, to wake up early, go do a 3-hour ride together, and not sit around all day for this race, and then just go do stuff. And he's like, 100%. So that's when I was kind of like, and then I crashed in the crit. So I was like, okay, I'm over crits for sure. And, I don't know. It's also weirder when you're racing people who are 22 years old and could be their dad. And I'm like, why am I still out here with these guys? So maybe I just do masters. It's shorter. It's people. The vibe is so different. It's so different. And
Right.
so I don't know, a lot of thinking. I was gonna come back to Rochester where I am now and do a couple races in August, but with not doing crits, I'm not going to drive all the way here. And Gravel Worlds is this 150-mile gravel race in Nebraska, so I might go from Albuquerque, Masters Nats, and go do that, and go back to doing some randomly long things, which actually kind of scares me because I rode 5 hours the other day and I was like, oh, this is tough. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I do find, just speaking on that last point, that funnily enough, endurance seems to be the thing that goes away quite quickly, and sort of both from a physical sort of level and a mental one, because as you said, you get used to 4 hours, and 2 hours seems really short then. But if you don't ride at all for a while, like even 2 hours, like sometimes you can be like, this is dragging on a little bit, even though it's only 2 hours, and you suddenly sort of look at things a bit differently, and 5 hours seems really, really long, and and on the physical side, it can be a bit tough while you make that transition back to. Usually, it comes if things go away quick, they come back quick as well. So you build up a little bit, and a week or two later, it's not too bad, but it can be a bit funny like that.
Yeah, and I think I might do this gravel race if my seat post is seized and I need to get it out. And so if I can get it, the bike shop's working on it, but it's 130 miles, so 200K. Not too much climbing. I think 12,000 feet. I don't know what that is in meters. 4,000 meters. In Ohio, and I'm like, man, so I rode 105 on the road. I'm like, man, 130 on gravel. It's gonna be interesting. We'll see. So I don't know. I think maybe I need to like separate myself. I've been asking myself, have I been really identifying myself with my race results, which I would hope not, but
Oh, it's hard as that. That's a hard thing to avoid, is sort of attaching some or all of your self-worth to like your race results and performances in training, and then when things don't go well, which they inevitably don't at certain times of the year, like if you get COVID, for instance, or you just, I don't know, sometimes for whatever reason, you just have ebbs and flows. Yeah, it can make you quite depressed sometimes if you start to think, all you have is like the race results, and then when they're not going well, your sort of whole image of yourself is reflective of sort of similar.
I think, and so I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, maybe I just do a few big races. Like, I'm still gonna ride. I still love training, and that's what I think I'm very thankful for. Why I would do 1,000-hour years. I just like riding a lot, but maybe not. It's last year I was bummed because it was like Chris's birthday, and then I had this race I wanted to go do, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna take 5 days off the bike, and and then that race is ruined, and then you're thinking, like my life does revolve a lot around the bike. And so that's the first thing I'm going to do is, as I was emailing like I'm not going to take the bike to Italy and just climb, like hike and do some other things. I think it'll be a good reset and get it. Like if I do that, there's no way I'll hit 1,000 hours. It's going to be impossible. And so there was part of me that's like, oh, what if I don't bring the bike? Then I won't hit this 1,000 hours. It's like, don't hit 1,000 hours then. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I think at this stage as well, when you've got so much in your history, and so much kind of just so much riding behind you. Maybe you don't need that, and honestly, you might find that like lower hours actually ends up in better performances. If it freshens you up and it makes you sort of feel more, mentally sort of balanced with your life, and you can enjoy periods of the year where you don't have to worry about riding the bike every single day. It could work out. It could certainly work out in your favor, really.
I think, I think back to when I did the podcast with Adam Hansen. He was like, your heart doesn't know any different between hiking and whatever and this and
Right.
that. And I've been trying to think of, maybe riding, not worrying about the riding as much in the winter, and maybe, I don't know. It's either way. I have said that the virus got in my brain, and I think it's just having these thoughts. And I've tried to tell athletes, I'm like, consistently think of, how does this fit in your life? You've got to be happy with it. And I wasn't unhappy with it, but I think seeing cycling in my life in a different way is just a healthy thing to think of, because I definitely don't want to be 55 and look back and be pissed that I rode so much. You know what I mean? So yeah, we'll see what happens. I think, I don't know. It would still be fun to go to some of these big gravel races and win the Masters category, or, and that's, I think, the last thing. That's my other piece. I always said I would stop doing P12 races when I wasn't relevant, when I'm getting like 7th and 8th all the time and I have no chance of winning. And it's like, okay, I'm good. Then do you go and do Masters? I don't know. So I guess it's just like training. You just got to be nimble and adjust as we go and make sure it's fun. And my last comment on this is, even though the days felt long, like I said, I looked around like, all right, what should I do now? Like, what else am I doing if I don't ride? I could go do another endurance sport, but it's not like, I think athletes that's the thought. They're like, whoa, I'm spending so much time doing this. I'm like, okay, well, what would you replace it with? If you're a diehard pottery person and you're not going to pottery class because you're riding all the time, then yeah, maybe you should cut some riding time and go throw some freaking clay. But I mean, yeah. So anyways, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Probably not riding. I always struggle after like the hill climb season in the UK to kind of just, because it leads you straight into like a UK winter, which is pretty demoralizing anyway. And you've just kind of been building up from like the halfway point of the year to this sort of September, October period that's quite intense. There's like races every weekend. Sometimes there's 2 in one day, so you could legitimately kind of race four times in one weekend. And if you were really crazy, you could do that for 2 months straight. But even if you're a bit more sensible, you still end up racing at least sort of once or twice every weekend for two months basically. And it's they're just maximal efforts. They're literally, you stand at the bottom of a hill stationary and just ride up as fast as you possibly can, so you're just like completely dead at the top. So it's an intense period, and then after that, I always just find like it's a bit of a struggle to just then refocus and what are the next goals, and do I feel like training hard again? And so I always need a bit of a rest, and then I find if I've had a bit of a rest, sometimes just like the back seizes up, or like this year I had kind of like weird sort of heart things going on with sort of palpitations and ectropic beats and stuff like that. So it's taken me a bit of a while to get back to things, and I probably haven't been riding as much as I sort of have done in the past. But there's a few like mountain bike races. Mountain bike nationals is coming up in July, so I think I can get myself kind of in half decent shape for that, and that gives me something to sort of train towards. And then from there, my headspace should be in sort of like hill climb mode, and I should be able to start preparing for that season. So
how do you describe yourself as a cyclist right now? If somebody met you and had no idea who you were, are you how do you just, I mean,
yeah,
what are you, a hill
question.
climber? Are you a mountain biker, or are you maybe trying to figure that out?
I read one interview that apparently I did with like, I think it was maybe Cycling Weekly or another magazine, where it said I'd said that I identified myself as like a hill climber now, which I don't really remember saying. Maybe I did. Maybe I was thinking differently at the time, but I wouldn't say that's the case. It's quite a small. It'd be a weird thing to say you are anyway, because it's like it's quite a niche discipline, and
Hey man, indoor specialist, that's a thing. And
that is a thing. That is a thing, actually. So yeah, maybe that's maybe hill climb's preferable to that. But I don't know. I've always like competed mostly on the mountain bike. So I haven't ridden a mountain bike a great deal recently, but I'll certainly be. It's not like I'm stopping riding or racing on in that discipline.
so is that pro mountain bike? I'm like my mountain bike knowledge is minimal, but you were the pro British champ, correct?
In mountain bike marathon, I was so the longer distance. So
Okay, so this is different.
yeah, so there's basically in mountain bike you've got two main disciplines, which are cross country Olympic, so the Olympic distance, and mountain bike marathon, which is like longer distance, usually one big loop or sort of two larger loops. National champ finish times are usually about 5 to 4.5 to 6 hours, whereas cross country's like an hour 20. So yeah, I was what year was it? 2017, I think. I was marathon national champ. 2018 was close second in the Olympic discipline. So didn't come too far from getting that, but just couldn't quite.
So you won the shorter one or the longer one, the 4 to 6 hour
longer
one?
Longer one.
Wow.
Which is weird to then go to then winning the hill climb nationals, which was like 3 minutes. So bit of a maybe a jack of all trades, master of none, you could potentially say.
Dude, that's the is that the segment of VLaMax? You shifted your
Yeah, I mean, maybe I've got some kind of physiological flexibility there that's helped.
Well, hopefully it's good to have that carrot there. How old are you now?
32.
Okay.
So maybe a few years left of prime VO2 Max and all that stuff before it starts sliding away.
You never know. I mean, I feel like mine's probably as high as it's been. Mine's just has stayed pretty steady, I think. But also, I mean, when I started training at the end of my 20s, people still weren't like, I wasn't coached to train VO2 Max. It was like, oh, you'll get those efforts in racing. It's like, oh, cool. Okay. Not true, but that's what a lot of people were doing. So
yeah, I think the good thing from my perspective is that I've always as weird as it sounds with winning like a 5 hour mountain bike race is that my kind of economy and I suppose long duration endurance has always been kind of my limiter. I think you find that quite a lot with people who have kind of a naturally high VO2 max. So I do think, and that's the kind of thing I think you can just build and build and build, almost not indefinitely, but that's something that has more scope to slowly improve over time. So hopefully if the VO2 max is high, and that obviously does slide a little bit with age, at least if it's naturally pretty high, there's a bit more sliding room there, and then if there's more scope to improve like the endurance and economy and stuff, that can still happen for quite a few years. So
well, I don't want too much sliding. I do not have a Tom Bell VO2 Max, but if I can keep it above 70 that'll be curious. I think maybe that's when I stop racing, when it's in the 60s, and I'm like, okay, I'm just a diesel now. I have nothing else, but I don't know. We'll see.
I think as we've maybe talked about before, I don't think your absolute VO2 max number's actually that important in a hill climb. Like in hill climbs where it's like 3 to 5 minutes, then it's kind of that as well as your sort of I guess W prime or glycolytic anaerobic capacity, whatever, is those two things are the key performance determinants. But in anything else, anything that's longer, it's really like what percentage of it can you hold for a long time. It's not really how high it's not really the maximal VO2 that's the key thing.
Well, and getting away from metrics and making it more realistic, I think that's the one thing I've been thinking of is like, okay, if I'm still a thing that's not a limiter for me is following attacks and moves from 20-year-old kids, that if I go and race everyone who's over 40, I'm way ahead of a lot of those guys who were never that strong and just don't have that anymore. So I'm like, okay, maybe I would actually be able to crush at Masters for quite some time, because that's a huge piece of racing. You can't follow a move, your day's over pretty quickly. So I don't know. We'll see. I think at the end of the day, it's just where's my motivation? And I think, yeah, it's weird, man. I'm like rethinking gravel, and maybe I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Anything in this? This is actually like a mini podcast right there. Anything in that you don't want me to post?
I was like wondering when does the podcast start? 'Cause it's quite
well,
nice. We tend to slip into quite an interesting discussion quite quickly.
Can that be a podcast? Is there?
I don't mind.
Yeah, cool. Okay.